Welcome to the next episode of the Dark Web Deacon. Before we begin, be sure to smash that subscribe button, click the bell to turn on notifications. New videos are published every Monday and Thursday, and as always, be sure to like and provide comments.
We're going to look at short and random passwords versus long but easy to remember. So let's take a look at these two passwords. Password number 1, password number 2. Which password do you think is the longest for a computer to crack? And which one do you think is the easiest to remember? Well, the answers to both questions is the same, password number 2. Yet people are encouraged time and time again to create passwords that look like password number 1. People have been taught to write passwords that are difficult for humans to remember for really no good reason. Over the years, front-end developers and companies have created rules to enforce these when you sign up for accounts, only allowing what is traditionally conceived to be a good password. We've all seen it. It's got to be at least 8 characters, include uppercase, include a lowercase, a number, and often a special character. So here's an example of what is generally considered a quote-unquote good password. Considering the fact you are often asked to enter a password like this, it's fair to say that you'd consider this to be a good password. The reality is, it's not. It's actually a pretty bad password. First of all, how is anyone supposed to remember that? What ends up happening, most common, is that users can't remember these, so they end up writing them down, which really defeats the whole purpose. Secondly, users end up using the same password over and over again for different services, because it's really hard to try to keep track of all these complicated passwords across multiple accounts. So when you create an account of any website, the code behind the scenes transforms your password into what's known as a hash. Assuming the company has some basic level of security, your password will end up looking something like this in the database. So even if the database is hacked, the hacker really can't do much with that information. It is possible to figure out the original password if the password is common enough or the algorithm that the company used is weak enough that it can be cracked with today's computer power. The issue is that not all companies hash their users' passwords, or they use very weak algorithms. That's always a risk. So it's up to the user to try to create these random complex passwords. At least that's what they believe. If a user ends up using the same password for many of these different services, all it takes is one of the services you signed up for to either not store it in a hash or use a poorly programmed algorithm that doesn't store it in a strong enough hash that it can't be cracked. So you end up getting compromised. For example, on one of these services, this hacker suddenly has your password for that account, but also all the other accounts you're using the same password for. This is kind of the biggest impact to consumers of data breaches today, and it happens a lot more than you think. This is why the advice of most security experts is, well, you have to use random different passwords on every different site to really be secure. Well, that's really hard for the average consumer. Today's users have accounts on tons and tons of sites, and unless they're a power user, they really aren't going to use a password manager. So what's the average user to do? It really boils down to how long does it take for a hacker to crack any specific password. Password cracking speeds have changed a lot in the last 20 years. Let's take a simple example of the password security one. This password in 2000 would have taken 3 years or so to crack. 2016, it would have taken less than 3 months. Now in 2020, probably just a matter of weeks. Take a look at another string of characters, BTYMSHRT. It's 8 random characters, all lowercase. It takes no more than a mere couple of minutes for a modern computer to brute force this password. Replace some of the characters with a few numbers, and you're looking at a password that'll take up to an hour to crack. Now replace that password with maybe some uppercase, and that'll take a few days. Add a special sign or special character in there, it'll take roughly a month or so. So this particular password technically looks pretty decent. No person would ever be able to guess it, but that's not the only thing we have to worry about. And it's also not on a short list of common passwords. Again, good, but not the only thing we have to worry about. This password would not take long for modern computers to crack. The issue is that this password is hard for a human to remember, but hackers have plenty of time and computing power to spend a month cracking a few thousand of these very easily. Now, let's take a look at this password. I love fishing and buying horses. That's 27 characters, all lowercase, no numbers, no random characters. Yet this password would take a computer thousands upon thousands of years to crack. So, for every character you add, the time it takes for a computer to crack greatly increases. So, I love fishing and buying horses is not on any short list of computer passwords, which is great, and no human would be able to guess it either. So, my advice is make a password that tells a story. Need an Amazon password? How about a jungle in Amazon and a dog in a house? So visualize that. A jungle in Amazon and a dog in a house. Suddenly you have an immensely powerful password that's fairly easy to remember and unique to one particular website. The password must be something that even people you know can't easily guess. So go through an exercise. What's an animal that you particularly aren't fond of? Let's say it's bears. And what type of bears don't exist? Red bears. Combining those two things, I once saw a red bear by my house. Now you have a password that takes millions of years for a modern computer to crack, and not even anyone in your family will ever guess it, because you're combining things that really you have no preference for, or that potentially in theory doesn't even exist. So no one would guess either of those previous two passwords. Yet, most websites will not allow you to use them as passwords. They will complain that either you didn't add a number or an uppercase, or that it's potentially too long. So you can kind of cheat the system a little bit. Maybe add your initials with a 1 and an exclamation mark at the end to any of these passwords you try to generate. Then they'll be acceptable pretty much across any system as long as they're not too long. So now you have an uppercase character, a number, and a special sign. Even though those three are the same across all your passwords, it really doesn't matter because the rest of your password is so unique. So remembering this technique next time you need to create a password, make one that's hard for computers to crack, that's easy for you to remember, and not the other way around. Just remember to stay away from any variation that are most frequently used and are very easily cracked. So the top 10 most common passwords that are cracked, I'll list below. So as you can see, it's not really all about how random a password is. It's really primarily about the length. Now, shorter passwords, 9, 10 characters that are random, again, they're very hard to crack. So the randomness does allow you to shorten the length. So that is a factor. But the primary factor I want you to take away from this episode is it's all about the length. So if you can get a long password that's easy to remember, it's definitely the way to go.
Thanks for watching, and as always, please like, subscribe, and provide comments, and turn on notifications by clicking the bell in order to check out future videos published twice a week.